All right. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Tommy Valentine from Historic Athens. We want to thank you for tuning in with us today. This is episode 36 of our series, This Moment in History, COVID-19 in Athens, Georgia. This week is brought to you by special sponsors, Karen and Norman Baldwin. We want to thank them for supporting the 5 episodes we're going to be completing this week. If this is your first time tuning in, we want you to know that the previous 35 episodes are available to you. You can just go to the videos section of our Facebook page. We also want to make a special note about how you can participate today. So there are certainly live casts out there. I'm sure we're all seeing a lot of them that are intended for you just to experience. That's not what this is. This episode is for something you can interact with. At the completion of all 55 interviews, we are compiling a digital archive as a historic record to submit to local libraries and research institutions. You have the ability to be part of that historic record by commenting today. So below this video, as long as it is live, as long as you're actually on the Historic Athens page, if you're experiencing this through a watch party or something else like that, those comments might not be able to be addressed live. But if you're actually at the Historic Athens page, if you're experiencing this as a live cast, just make your comment live. We can bring it on screen and we can actually address it then. I also just want to start today, before we bring in our guest, by doing something I don't often do, which is editorialize ever so slightly. So, as we know, this series was started because of COVID-19 and the effects that it's happening on the effects it is having on the Athens community. I am not a professional interviewer. I am an executive director for our 501c3 nonprofit, Historic Athens. But just speaking as a personal citizen, I know that history doesn't exist in a vacuum and that the incidents we are seeking to examine, COVID-19, are no longer the only historic issues or even the primary historic issue that's on everyone's mind. So that's especially important considering that our guest today, as a photojournalist, is out in the field. He's practically inescapable. Pretty much anywhere you go, you see him all the time. But that included last night's and yesterday's protests. And I imagine that it would be inappropriate for us to have a guest like Josh on today's program and not delve some into yesterday and that moment in history. And so we will. If you have additional questions as we go, please comment below. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to watch this. And also, those comments don't just have to be questions. They can be words of encouragement, feedback, anything else like that. So with that said, without further ado, let's go ahead and bring on our guest. So I'm just going to make a few quick clicks here, and then he'll be with us. So one moment. All right, great. Josh, hello. One moment. I'm just going to switch your audio on. All right, great. Josh, thanks so much for being here with us. How are you today?
Good, good. Thanks. Call it caffeinated. I'm a little tired from last night, but doing good.
I can imagine. You know, last night, I think right before I went to bed, I think before 2 a.m., I sent you a message that I said, well, you will certainly have some interesting stories to tell today. So
Yeah.
I imagine you, what time did you actually manage to get to sleep last night?
Ooh, my other photographer sent me photos around 3:30, and I got everything kind of. I got all the photos and I have to compilate them kind of into a photo gallery that makes sense, and then put them into our system. So probably around like 4:30 or 5.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, so yeah, so certainly you've earned some heavy doses of caffeine today.
Yeah.
You know, Josh, typically we start these discussions by making sure our audience gets to know whoever it is that we're interviewing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to make sure we stay on track with that today. You're a familiar figure around Athens. You're someone who, as I mentioned, I mean, if you go to a concert or a party or a charitable event or a protest or anything, they're likely, first of all, you're an easy person to spot. You're tall and you have a very signature haircut.
Yeah.
Um, but you are kind of ubiquitous around Athens, but that's not the same thing as people knowing you. So let's take some time to get to know you a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and your relationship with Athens, Georgia?
Yeah, sure. I've been in Athens around 10 years. I've worked in the paper right at 3 years, and yeah, I came to Athens to go to the University of Georgia to pursue a career in journalism, and it kind of worked out. I fell in love with the city, and I always wanted to kind of do community journalism and stay in the South, just because I feel like people from their own communities or from at least their own like home states can kind of do they're from there, so the journalism they do is more valuable, more rooted in the community, I feel. So I feel like if I'm gonna stay in Georgia or the South, Athens is probably the best place to be. And I would just fall in love with the city.
Absolutely. So, you know, Josh, you and I have never talked about this, but there was a time in my life where I was really attracted to photojournalism. I used to keep a Canon Rebel around my neck constantly for several years. I was like I was a photo editor at Cedar Shoals Blueprints, and then
Yeah.
I initially intended to go to school for journalism. My only real brush with documenting anything in real time beyond the hip hop scene was I was in high school and 9/11 happened, and that was how I processed that day and in the weeks to come, was just taking photos. I know that it's a way to see the world and give yourself some agency through it. I know what attracted me to it, but I'm really curious what attracted you to it, because whatever it is, it continues to fuel you. I mean, you've been doing this for some time. So what attracted you to photography, and what led you to really embracing it as a career?
Oh, it's growing up, I was always into creative things. I would took art classes, really into the arts in school, and then I was really involved in on Eagle Scout scouting and community service with the church and stuff like that. And it kind of came together. I mean, you see, I mean, you can't compare myself to these people with like James Noctaway and these photojournalists around the world that are just like heroes of what they do. Carol Guzzi and people like that. But it was kind of a way to merge like a creative field with a service, or try to make the world a better place. And that's kind of what I feel like. And then it is that kind of just history.
Yeah.
I've always been kind of a passionate about history. I minored in it at Georgia, and it's if it it always goes back to, if there's not pictures of it, it didn't happen, and you can always deny it. And there's numerous historical examples of that. And then I wrote a paper about, we had to write a paper at the photojournalism program at Georgia about arguing just kind of what the most important photo was in kind of recent history. And I did a paper on the Emmett Till murder photos, just about how that impacted the civil rights movement, and kind of put a face to the issue, And then I figured, it's just an important field, and it's and you see today that it still is that first draft of history with COVID. And I mean, this is I get it all the time where it's just like journalism, there's a lot going on right now, even though it is a grim thing. But I've had my photos, all around the country during these last few months, just because.
Yeah, I was going to jump in and talk about that, because I know that you have had, at least to my knowledge, quite a few photos in recent years that have gone at least nationally, I guess internationally as well. The most recent one I think I saw that happened is on the day of the barbershops reopening. You took a photo that I think ended up in at least USA Today, among a few other places. I think you were the one that captured the photo of Commissioner Mariah Parker, the swearing in. Is that right? That
went viral internationally. Al Jazeera picked it up, Reuters picked it up. And I mean, that was just I think she won by 13 votes, and it was just kind of a thing to do, the news of the day. And then using Malcolm X's autobiography to swear in, and just the little details like that. There was so much intricate details to that. And then the photo of her with the power fist, and the just montage of white former council members. Just a very powerful photo.
Can I ask? Over the last several years, I've had the pleasure of getting to know a lot of journalists that focus on the written form, and I know that there's a profound and at least casually understood by the layperson ethics of written journalism. I
Mhm.
don't know as much about the ethics of photojournalism. I know you mentioned that it's the first draft of history, but I imagine that there's some ethics on best practices for
Mhm.
people in your field. Can you tell us a little bit about what distinguishes, let's say, a good, responsible photojournalist from, if I just decided to pick up my camera and take photos?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think it goes situation. I mean, it's very situational. Like if I don't know, I was doing a story, kind of just Saturday in Athens, but during COVID, and I was just driving around, literally just trying to find people hanging on their front porches,
Mhm.
and I would just, and I mean, that's a situation where like I'm on the street and like I'm perfectly valid to like use a reasonably long lens and photograph them from the street, but that's why do that. I kind of stopped. I'm like, hey, I'm Josh Jones with Athens Banner Herald. Because I wanted to get their names and talk to them and form a dialogue, and it just really depends on the situation. When we had the deaths at the nursing home in
Right. Sure.
Athens, for example, for that, I mean, that was just kind of you had TV crews just kind of like on a just waiting for. We've all seen the photos of New York of the deceased being brought out and stuff like that, and it was just that's a different situation. So I mean, it really just depends. I mean, you shoot everything, but
Yeah.
then taking photos and publishing photos are two different things, and it's just it helps to have that little bit of just time to think about it because you don't know what the story's going to be when things are happening in front of you.
Right.
Like yesterday, the police moved in, but they were in full riot gear, and in the moment, I ran National Guard removing protesters from the Broad Street, which they were involved. The people firing tear gas were the Athens riot police.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, so that's just the difference that like 30 minutes makes because when tear gas canisters are flying and all the yelling is going on, it's hard to see the little Athens Clarke County police badge on their shoulders and stuff. So.
Right. I mean, I know we discussed before we went on air, and I see a good question here from Deborah Gonzalez. So I'm going to bring that up on the screen here in a second. But, I know you mentioned right before we went on air that it's one thing to watch events unfold the way we have around the country with these protests. It's another thing entirely for you as a journalist to hear the pop of the tear gas canister and know that you and your fellow journalists that are out there, I know we talked about Taylor from Red and Black,
Mhm.
you are not protected. You are just as I know we saw photos of Taylor, taking her contact lenses out. I think that's your photo, right?
It's
Um,
Gabriella Aldi's, but yeah.
okay, great. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I mean, you all are getting hit by this tear gas. You're out there on the front lines. So I imagine there's a fear and a psychological toll to doing work like you did last night. Is that right?
Yes, yes, and I mean, it sounds weird, but honestly, like the thing that kept going through my mind is like,
Yeah.
do I go? Like the cameras I use have two memory cards in them,
Yep.
so do I go and like give those two cards to Lee or put them in my car in case I do get arrested, just so the photos can
Wow.
get out there? So that's that. I mean, that was honestly a little bit above like getting hurt. Honestly, I don't know
Yeah.
why that is my mind. At least in the moment, that was what I was thinking. But I didn't do any precaution like that because I mean the logistics of somebody getting those cards and
Yeah.
then going through all the editing and captioning and so but that was a concern to me. But then like we were giving out earplugs. I had the mask for
Right.
COVID. I had a water bottle. I mean, they were the protest organizers are the ones that kind of stayed to kind of I more or less chaperone the younger crowd, and just the other people is just they kept going out and making sure like everyone had a water bottle, and like they even had a little demonstration of how to help someone that had been pepper sprayed or tear gassed. So
Yeah.
I had a bottle of water on me, and yeah, it was a interesting night.
So let's dive into our comment section here for a second. First of all, Broderick Flanagan, I experienced yesterday's rally. We're going to talk about COVID today. My family, we have had the privilege, but we have felt responsible for continuing to shelter in place. And so my support for yesterday was mainly financial and reaching out to organizers that we supported, but I was not out there. And so my ability to experience the rally was through people like you and people like Broderick. And so I watched part of it through Broderick's Enlightened Media Productions live cast. Broderick just shared riot police for a peaceful demonstration. I don't know whether you're actually supposed to say shaking my head or sma, but sma. Josh, you are around crowd scenes all the time, large tailgates, raucous parties. Certainly, you and I have been at some of the largest protests, including the largest protest in Athens, Georgia history. Was what you saw yesterday unusual? Have you ever seen anything like that before?
No, I kept comparing it, going back to that, the larger protest, which I believe was just when Trump was elected, if I'm not mistaken, was the occasion for that. But yeah, I was talking to Lee Shearer, he has a much more historical background in town, just being here longer. And no, there's never been National Guard troops in Athens, and I've never seen just Broad Street blocked like that, with the huge crowd.
Right.
And the organizers, Mariah Parker and the company, I don't think planned for what happened to happen, where the smaller groups, the main protest wrapped up probably around 6 or 7 before sundown, and then just groups kind of stayed. And like I said before we were talking, it was kind of remember, it was kind of going back to that for when Trump was elected. We had the corner in front of Chick-fil-A where it was like the remnants of the protest, and then out by the Confederate Memorial, and then over here by Starbucks you had guys with assault rifles. Instead of going back 4 years ago, it was more just different like factions of UGA students kind of protesting and demonstrating, but now it was a very different situation.
I see Deborah Gonzalez shared a question. This is when we were having our earlier, just more foundational discussion, but I think it applies to moments like this. So Deborah said, when you're out there taking photos, are you thinking of anything in particular? Are you looking for something in particular? Or do you just take photos and screen later? So, Josh, what was your first year operating in the field?
First year, in Athens. Okay, it's funny. The first assignment I did in Athens was Martin Luther King Day, and I met Melissa Link for the first time before she had even ran for office. So I can't really place the year, but that was my first day in Athens. But I was with the Gainesville Times before that as a freelancer. So
I just know that within your professional lifespan, or at least with probably your interest with the camera, we've seen things go from analog to digital. You now have the ability to, you mentioned those 2 flash drives. You have the ability to probably shoot more. But I also know that, as we talked about with you being up till 5 a.m. last night, you probably are not trying to create too much work for yourself with just taking endless shots and then editing. So can you delve into Deborah's question here? Are you looking for something? Do you hit moments where you're like, oh, I got that? Do you just plan to edit it later? How does your process work?
Yeah, I mean, there's different things. Like yesterday, it was just definitely showing the crowd and then showing the space they're moving through. Like I have a shot I could show you if you want, but it's kind of just the foreground's in blur of just like kind of a sea of people, but then off in the distance is in focus, and it's just a sea of people walking from kind of the Classic Center area, like with the turn right there is in focus, but then there's just a sea of people coming at me.
Josh, one thing that our audience is going to be really happy about is this platform actually allows us the ability to share some of your photos. And so what I'd like to do is, this feels like a good time for us to go ahead and bring that on screen. Let's go through last night's photos and anything you want to share. and then we'll come back to the discussion. And then in a few minutes, we'll bring up, I know you've chosen some highlights from this COVID era, and we'll show those.
Mhm.
But could, if I were to share your screen on screen right now, could you go through some of last night's photos?
Yeah, sure thing.
Okay, hold on one second. Let me just go ahead and switch this on.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, great.
So this is the photo in question. You see, like, this is the turn right here of I guess East Campus Road onto Broad Street where they're coming. I guess you can see my cursor.
Mhm.
And here you just see the massive amounts. I mean, estimates I think are around 2,000 people, but I've never seen where a march has shut down Broad Street like this. You know. And I mean, I think this shows like you have cop cars just kind of blocking it off, kind of like parade style, and but yeah, you look for stuff like that, and then historical landmarks. Like this is a shot I made with Arch, just showing that sea of people. But then you look for obviously the start of the protest, just like what the organizers are doing. And then the light, like right here, a little bit of sunlight is hitting. Just little things like that that set it apart. Yeah, this one. This kind of asymmetrical, just sea of protesters, and you have the little placements, College Avenue, and down here, marching in front of the Georgia Theater and Horton's Drug. But and then like this last night when kind of there was a standoff, more or less a standoff, when the protesters formed a human chain, kind of just forming a box around downtown.
Yeah.
Yeah. Try and see. Yeah, but you look for moments like that. I mean, this is when they're vandalizing. Yeah, but you try to document it as best you can, and then like show the different moments of like just that face and that expression. Then everybody behind her is so
sure, the resolve. Yeah.
Yeah. But then you show like the this is kind of what the protest had winded down. This is probably like around 11:30 or so. You see, there's just like enough protesters to kind of form a human chain, kind of wall around the square from the Arch to College Square.
Yeah.
But then you see like this is the response.
So that's one of the things I'm really curious about, Josh. I'm going to pull. I'm going to leave this on screen for a second while we talk. So one of the things that I'm actually going to do this. Let's, for our audience's sake, let me just kind of keep you on screen for a second here.
Okay.
So Josh, when you are shooting like this,
yeah,
I mean, you know, you're in the fog of war. Like what is your process for remaining calm and objective? You know, I mean, you're having to make decisions in the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that was the heart of Deborah's question. What are you doing to stay in the moment?
I'm trying to make photos and trying to make here was a complicated situation because I'm trying to make photos to have these still photos for the record, but I'm also like, this is happening live, and I think I took these photos and then I went up with the Facebook Live after they had kind of moved in.
Yeah.
But if I go back, no. Yeah, there was a leaf blower. But here I'm kind of behind the mailboxes here because the law enforcement, they're so honed in on the protesters that they've obviously noticed me here and realized that I'm either they've already noticed me at this point and decided I'm not a threat, as you can kind of see this woman over here with the phone. They've also the same thing. Like, I mean, we've seen videos of just kind of how, I mean, different law enforcement throughout the country, of some of them target journalists, and that obviously didn't happen last night, but it was still intimidating.
I mean, here, Josh, I'm going to come back on screen real quick, just so we can have a quick conversation. So, one of the things that we are documenting here, right, is history in real time. That's the whole point of this live cast. And if somebody's watching this 100 years from now, it it really has been shocking and eye-opening to see the way some journalists have been targeted around the country. We've seen tactics that sometimes are associated with places we think of as very far away, where journalists are being given shot with rubber bullets right above their eye, where they're being almost we've seen live footage of television news crews getting fired upon. Was any of that on your mind yesterday when you were out there? Did you have that sense of fear based on what you're seeing?
Yeah, there was a moment after the protesters had been kind of cleared out where the riot police had moved just kind of to exactly where they were, just the center of that kind of square, and a police officer had me and his like a flashlight on his like shotgun projectile thing, like looking right at me, and I'm just like, please don't. I'm standing right in front of Starbucks, the place. So, I mean, there's a chance it could have taken out the window, or maybe he just saw that I was a journalist. So, yeah, that was a scary moment for me last night.
I got to ask Josh. So, first of all, please forgive the naivety of this question. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think it's it's. This is a complicated thing to try to articulate, but what I was going to say is, has there been any renewed discussion among the journalism community about some means of making sure you're recognizable at times like these? I know there are press badges. Ideally, I'd like to live in a world where no one's getting shot with rubber bullets or tear gas. But I know that we, as we discussed earlier in the program, for anyone that just logged in since then, we had at least one journalist last night here in Athens get gassed. The warning to disperse, certainly you as journalists shouldn't feel the need to heed that warning. You're there to document, but you're just, I mean, a weapon like tear gas absolutely can affect you. Is there any way to better protect photojournalists or journalists that are out on the scene so that they are not getting harmed?
Yeah, I mean, you see people with the press kind of like flat jackets and stuff at the larger cities and things like that. But I mean, most of the time we have just our little press badge and cameras. And I mean, you've seen the protests at the governor's mansion and stuff where the most of the media would kind of be off to the side of the police, and it was just. I mean, you try to stay like yesterday. I picked my spot kind of in front of the Starbucks just because if they moved in, I kind of would have shelter no matter which way they moved in. And I had another photographer that was unfortunately like downwind of the tear gas on the other side of me, and but it's a difficult situation to always make sure you stay safe out there because there is I mean, you got to look at it through the eyes of the officers because, I mean, they're not. I mean, there is, you got to give them the benefit of the doubt that they're always, they could be seriously hurt, like rocks and things thrown at them, even though they do have the protective gear. I remember last night when the cops were kind of giving me directions on like where to go. They were like, "Don't run." I like went to the right, kind of behind the police, and they're like, "Don't get behind the officers and stuff." So,
right.
I understand that they have, I mean, they put their lives on the line too. I mean, not necessarily this, but just in their daily job, so I understand their precautions they're taking there. But it is, it's tough covering protests and violent uprisings like this.
So, Josh, a couple other things I want to share. Jeremy Field just jumped in to say thanks for sharing some of your work from last night, crazy times. And we will... We do encourage folks here. First of all, support your local newspaper. God, please support your local newspaper and your publications. Really important. If you're not already a subscriber, please consider becoming a subscriber. If you were a subscriber and you stopped being a subscriber, Josh here is a good example of why it's important to support our local newspapers and publications. I think some folks, I mean, it's easy to lose sight of that. But I wanted to bring on Deborah just shared, have seen you so often, but nice to hear your perspective. Thanks. Lyra Rhodes shared a few things I want to address here. So 2 questions, and I'll show them both to you, Josh, and then we'll get into them. One is, do you archive photos you don't use in publication for historical purposes? And then the other question is, and this is one I definitely want to spend some time on, have the police asked for any photos to identify vandalism? And so I'll introduce that question in a second in a certain way. But for right now, let's go to this first one. So yeah, so what do you do to kind of preserve your photos? Do you assume that the ones that enter the public domain are the ones that matter? How do you approach that?
Yeah. Okay. So the cameras I shoot 2 cards, so there's a redundancy there because they do fail the camera cards that record the data. So I have 2 cards there, and then every assignment I'm at, I bring every photo in from that shoot, and it's tagged with my name, copyright, Athens, Georgia, and the date, just as it's brought in. And then as I'm shooting, yesterday was kind of a bad example because it's just there's so much going on, it's happening so fast. But you're going through and tagging kind of photos that you think are keepers that you want to look back onto during the shoot, and then so you bring everything in just to have it, just in case, like sports, for example, like go back and we need a photo of just X player or something like that. And you never know what you have, for example, until you know if you have it. But so all of that's archived, and then I have kind of my keepers and my tagged photos that I go through and I edit and sort those down to a suitable, usually around 40 to 20 images, just depending on what it is. Yesterday was more just because it was a longer day. But yeah, all of that's archived, and then the keepers are kind of put in to a Google Drive system, just so anybody in the paper can get them. And then just like they canceled graduation, and I think I was out just on a walk, and on my phone I shared commencement photos from the last 2 years with my editor. So it was just the fluidity of the news, just having an archive in the cloud that I can access on my phone.
Josh, I want to bring in 2 comments. One I just showed you, and then a separate one from one of our favorite people, Tom Hodgson. And so I'm just going to bring up Tom's comment and then marry it a bit with Lyra's comment. So Tom said, thanks for saying what you did about caring about the officers, Joshua. They don't want to be there, and they sure don't want to hurt people. And then I'm going to combine that with Lyra's question here about have the police asked for any photos to identify vandalism? So Tom, Lyra, Deborah, Jeremy, everybody that's commenting, thank you. Thank you for watching and for your perspectives. So Josh, you are out in the field so much that you are around a lot of our officers here in Athens Park County quite a bit. I know that anyone in Athens who does anything, I mean, I've met officers at our Rotary Club or that come out to secure events for us, like Historic Athens Porch Fest. You get to know the local officers in town as people. And then I imagine that's got to be the case for you. You've probably run into a lot of these faces frequently. And then you have a night like last night or a situation like COVID and shelter in place. And it probably requires engagement on different levels. Lyra's question was about whether they ever see you as a source. But can you talk a little bit about your relationship with ACCPD and how that works as a professional?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's always, this goes with a lot of people I interact with in the community. Like, on some level, I interact with law enforcement, the city government, just as like sources for stories, and then just the different points they bring up. Like Tim Denson brings up several different things. Mariah Parker organized that yesterday. Law enforcement do charity events, and then just different events throughout the community. And Chief Sproul has done several different things to try to open up the police department to the community, and has been really positive there, and been really I honestly believe he's been trying to be as transparent as he can about all the tragedies we had last year and the 6 deaths we had via the Athens Police Department. But you always try to stay kind of at like an arm's length kind of relationship of where you're on good terms, but you don't want to hurt that kind of just journalistic integrity I have is where I'm like I can still interact with this person unbiasedly and report on them, So that's but yeah, I mean the Athens police. So that's what was so. I was honestly very. I was believing that they were just going to sweat them out last night and just kind of just like because I mean it was a peaceful protest, and they had done. Like we were talking before this, and there was one point where the after the main protest had ended, they had kind of done another march through downtown and reblocked Broad Street, but it had already been open for cars, and the officers just kind of like reminiscent of a parade or a fender bender traffic accident, which we have a lot in Athens. They just kind of redirected traffic really casually and real professionally and nice, and then the night ended the way it did, which is just it kind of was really surprising. At midnight, they made the because there hadn't been a this is an unlawful assembly, I need to disperse, which I mean I've covered several of these like sit-ins and stuff like that where the cops will come and make that in person. This was done via a drone in the air, which was very different. And then the not the law enforcement, but the curfew was kind of nobody at the protest really found out about it till maybe like an hour after it was put on the social media. So like 10:30, 11. So it was just it was a very interesting scene last night.
Yeah, I want to get this for the historic record, and then we're going to turn to COVID here. I see we have some ongoing questions and comments, and we appreciate the passion of everyone here. History is different depending on the lens you look through it, and so we're trying to be as careful and objective as possible. But Josh, I'd like to just very briefly share what it looked like from an audience or from a citizen standpoint, and tell me if this seems like a fair record. So. In the aftermath of the shootings and the continued community anger about police brutality, the death of unarmed Black men and women, that similar to the protests that have been going on around the country, one was unfolding yesterday. At first, it seemed like they were going to be two distinct protests. Over time, they merged into a single protest. And at some point, shortly around dinner time last night, it seemed like the protest had effectively ended. We had seen a lot of social media posts that suggested, a peaceful day of protest. So proud of Athens, Georgia. I saw a lot of those things going out in our feeds. And then it wasn't until much later in the evening, closer to 10 or so, that many folks caught wind of the curfew. I know that I was actually out driving when I heard about the curfew, and I had to go home. And then as the night unfolded from there, we saw the National Guard, who prior to that had been really more rumor throughout the day. Suddenly it became very clear this was real. And then, shortly after midnight, things seemed to escalate. And as you mentioned, I was surprised to see that the order of disbursement, instead of being given in person, that a drone was sent in, and it was given verbally through a drone. And then shortly thereafter, you and your fellow journalists and the protesters that were out there came under fire from tear gas and other forms of force. Is that a fair understanding for the historic record of what you experienced?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the protest organizers, it's just, you have 2,000 people there. It really smaller. What happened was it went on. They marched through downtown. It was a beautiful, peaceful protest, and then it just seemed to be there were smaller instigators that wanted to kind of. The protest organizers trying to keep them from saying overly flamboyant things that were like kind of. They weren't censoring them, but they were just trying to not incite things that protest was not organized to be, and then kind of just resorted to wrapping it up once the gentleman with assault rifles showed up on the scene, which I think might have driven a bit. After the protest organizers kind of wrapped everything up, the majority of the people left. It dwindled from multiple thousand people to maybe a couple hundred. They kept marching through town. Well, it was that weird setup where we go back to when Trump was elected. We had one group of protesters on a corner kind of over here in front of Starbucks. We had remnants from the protest in front of Chick-fil-A and in front of the Civil War Memorial. and then there was kind of just this weird back and forth with like, I remember I'm just gonna call them the guys with assault rifles because they were saying they were there, but it's also the Bugaboo thing. So I'm just gonna give that exactly the way it was presented to me. That's what I saw. And but you had this interesting thing where it was just kind of back and forth between them, like who are these people, and then like but then as all this is happening, I'll call them anarchists dressed in black. They might have Antifa, I'm not sure, but I mean just dressed in all black, face masks. As this is all happening, kind of behind the Civil War Memorial, they start vandalizing it, and it's just there's so much going on. I mean, the law enforcement is watching the guys with the assault rifles and kind of watching if there's not, a altercation going on.
Right.
And then there's all this spray painting going on, and then the group with the assault rifles kind of joined the protest in this like makeshift thing where they kept marching through, and then but even like the Bugaboo people left. They were completely gone by the time, I would say, 11 at least.
I mean, that's the interesting part that I was asking about. It seems like there was a 9 p.m. curfew announced, but the escalation to tear gas and other force didn't happen until 3 hours after that. So Josh, I want you to stick with us here for 1 second. Everyone who's watching right now, first of all, thank you so much for tuning in. I see we've got 43 folks watching this live. I know we usually get as many as 600 in the week after these videos go out. So if you're watching this when it's not live anymore, thank you for still tuning in. But regardless, this is one of the larger live audiences we've seen. Josh, stay with us. Audience, stay with us. We're going to take 90 seconds or so, thank our annual sponsors, and then I really need to tilt things to the original purpose of this discussion while we still have time with you, Josh, and talk about COVID-19. So everyone stick with us. We're not changing up the format, and we can still get in your questions if you have one that you feel like we haven't answered. So very briefly, I just want to show this on screen. We want to thank the sponsor for this week's live cast. That includes Karen and Norman Baldwin, who sponsored the 5 episodes you're going to see this week. Every weekday at 1 p.m. here on the Facebook page for Historic Athens, you can tune in and see us interview different folks from around the community leaders, different professionals. Also, we are a 501c3 nonprofit that seeks to celebrate and conserve community heritage here in Athens, including oral history. If you see some of the names on here, if these are businesses you can frequent, please do so. They support local history and the idea that we have to tell the whole story here in Athens, Georgia, if we're going to have the kind of future we need. So thanks to everyone here. If you'd like to become a donor or a member, please do so. Even $5 a month makes a big difference. You can go to historicathens.com. This is the schedule you can see for the 55 interviews we're doing here. Tomorrow we're speaking to Blake Odd from Flagpole, so journalism back to back. Then Jessica Rothaker from Heirloom Cafe, Chris Heron from Creature Comforts, and then rounding out the week with Commissioner Jerry Neesmith. So if you see a name of someone that you'd like to have watched, go to the video section. And then you can also see there's some names coming up, all kinds of folks with different backgrounds, different roles in the community. We'd love for you to check that out. 2 last things, and then we're back to Josh. Each day at 2, after this live cast wraps, you can go to the Facebook page for the Athens Welcome Center. We also run the Athens Welcome Center. They're offering different historic tours and workshops. I'll update that image tomorrow with this week's schedule. And then one last thing I just want to show on screen here. So we do have shirts available. It's an easy way to contribute to our organization. You can see there are shirts there for the Boulevard Historic District, Rock Springs Historic District, and Buildings and Landmarks of Athens. You can go to historicathens.com for more information there. So, all right, Josh, getting back to our discussion here. Thanks for letting me share that. And we do, of course, thanks to everyone who made today possible. So, Josh, let's talk COVID. So we've got, let's spend about another 15 minutes together. I might run about 5 minutes past when we were scheduled, but this is important. COVID has no doubt, I'm sure, affected the way you do your job, the things you're seeing out there. I'll ask an open-ended question. First of all, how has COVID-19 affected the way you do your job?
Yeah, wow, it's this last three months. Yeah, it's been crazy. I mean, you kind of just lock into the routine of like vitamin C, washing your hands, taking off your shoes, mask, and then you just kind of do that, religiously almost. Like every time you leave the house or go to an assignment, and like cleaning my cameras, and you just kind of lock into that and don't deviate from it. Because I feel like I'm doing as much as I can with where I'm putting it in, and then those first few months, I feel like it was mostly just the desolateness of that. I did cover the testing centers at Piedmont and stuff, but you're at such a distance and stuff that I feel like social distancing wasn't a thing. Really that big of a concern with most of the stuff I was doing. There were some of the bars closing and stuff. I was a little more around people, but they wore masks and stuff, and they also wore masks. And but yeah, you put those precautions in place, but it's just been. And it was a very busy, those first few months. I think last week kind of slowed down, but then you saw this weekend and yesterday, obviously everything, and the bars open today, so are reopened today. So it's been almost a never-ending thing. I was working 6-day weeks at some point there, and because it was interesting because I before COVID I had a good amount of freelancers and everything. With sports and just general assignments, but a lot of them, Gabrielle Ality, who helped me out yesterday at the protest, she was interning at CNN and helping freelance here because she was based in Athens, but CNN canceled their internships and she went home to Pennsylvania for. She just came back, I think 2 weeks ago or so, 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I was, and it's just I would bring people up from Atlanta or areas like that, but it's just we can't afford to pay the same as a big agency like AP or Getty, for a news assignment. I've hired photographers for the SEC championship where I could pay them a good wage in my opinion, but what I can pay just to come do features of the city and stuff like that, I really need someone based in town. So it's really been all on me to kind of be the visual side of the paper.
You've been out there and you've had a front row seat to our community's attempt to grapple and understand COVID-19. What have you seen? What has the narrative been that you've seen unfolding? And if you could please take us back to when this first came on the scene to now. Yeah. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah. If you want to share some photos.
Yeah. Absolutely. Let me do that, please.
Yeah, let me see.
And I do want to say this. I know there are some excellent comments in the feed that we haven't had time to get to. Thank you so much for participating. Thank you to Rocky for saying Josh is the man. We agree. Kaylin said, thank you for covering the protest. Please be careful out there. The press is more important than people realize. We've seen Laura Keeve share some thoughts on the protest. If you want to see those, jump in the comment section. I see Debbie Jones said, thank you for what you do. Hardy Morris, we love Hardy. Hardy said, thank you both. Thank you, Hardy. And Mark said, thanks. So I wanted to make sure we kind of shared those. But Josh, I'm going to now have your screen take over our screen. Jeremy Field said, awesome convo, gents. Very timely discussion. All right. So Josh, will you take us through the narrative of COVID-19? Walk us through.
Yeah. So, the big thing, these are photos from what would have been the first day of UGA football practice, which is kind of the big thing in the spring. This was March 17th, so you got 6 days after the pandemic was declared. And normally this is kind of, I joke with the other the beat writers that this is kind of like the first day of school. We're all kind of locked in. Kirby has a press conference at noon. We get players throughout the day, and then there's a big practice. And then there's a practice where we get the most amount of media time for that first day. And I got out of my car at Foley Field, just deserted. There's no one there. And this is the time of year when you have baseball, spring practice, gymnastics, basketball teams, and tournaments and stuff like that. And it's just a ghost town.
Wow.
And for me, that was kind of, I know it's kind of through the lens of sports, but this was before, I think the curfew was passed the day after these photos were taken, or the Thursday after these photos were taken. So, but yeah, this was a big hit. or just when it sunk into me that this was happening. And there's also all those are photos from the high schools and stuff. But then you go to downtown Athens, and it's just it's desolate. Everything's closed. These are from these are the 2 days later. I think this is the day that the shelter-in-place ordinance was passed when these photos are taken. This is the Globe, which is still closed. And then graduation is canceled for UGA. Georgia Theater. But no, I went downtown that first Saturday night and captured a video of just the eerie silence. And I mean, it was I think I came downtown at like 11 o'clock on a Saturday night, which is, normally it's just everybody's filling the streets. You can't it's standing room like shoulder to shoulder as they cross right there in front of Magnolia. And but it was a ghost town. I mean, it was me and
surreal.
So yeah, several just the homeless individuals that are downtown, and it was a surreal scene of just quiet and Wook Street. Bizarro here. But no, I mean, it's I've never seen anything like it, just the way the town shut down. But no, there was solidarity, and a lot of the people actually did stay at home, and it's weird. It's crazy how it is. It's just it ended, and everything's kind of opened back up now.
Yeah, well, it was that transition that I know you saw. I mean, we all were seeing it in different ways, but you really were out there in the field seeing it firsthand. One group of images, I don't know if you have them handy, but it's something that we talked about. And here, I'll temporarily hide your screen and we can go back to it in 1 second. Also, I just sent you a message through host chat if you want to peep at that. But I drove by you one day in the neighborhood I grew up in. So I grew up in Cedar Creek, went to Cedar Shoals High School.
Yeah.
I can only imagine how painful it's been for some of these graduates to have their graduation go out with a whimper instead of the bang that they expected and deserved. We've seen that with some of our interns who have experienced really muted graduations that, after 4 years at UGA. But I was shocked to drive through Cedar Creek and to see so many graduates out with their cap and gowns, families, and I'm not trying to shame anyone here. I'm just saying this was an odd thing to see. The high school graduations had been canceled to prevent people from getting in kind of close proximity and gatherings like that. And then I know you saw through your lens that despite those graduations being canceled, folks still found ways to gather in cap and gowns and have their own kind of pseudo graduations.
No.
Was that as surreal for you as it was for me, or by that point had that just become more normalized out in the field?
It had become, I think it had become normalized, because I mean, I think by that point you kind of have the people that aren't wearing masks when you go out in public and a lot of that seeing around. But I mean, it was the organizers had really went to great lengths to have it not be that and to keep everybody in cars and have everybody social distance. But it's just teenagers, or I don't know. I decided to break it down like that, but
I get it. I mean, I had this discussion with my brother who also went to Cedar, and I mean, we said, as a high schooler, you exist to break rules. So the idea that you're going to obey even safety guidelines is difficult. Still, though, I'm just wondering. You mentioned that going to that training day and having everything be shut down was a real moment, an eye-opening moment of, wow, this is really happening. Mm-hmm. You also were there for a whole other milestone, which was the day of reopening. And we referenced that photo earlier in today's broadcast. Also, if you're tuned in, we know it's just hit 2:00. We like to wrap up at 2, but we also realize how lucky we are to have Josh here and so many of you watching. So Josh has just agreed to spend about another 15 minutes or so with us. If you want to go ahead and head over to the Athens Welcome Center for their live cast, we won't discourage you. But also when this is over, you can also go back and watch the rest of that episode and go back and see what you missed. So Josh, you were there for that milestone of reopening. Do you have any of those images handy? Do you want to talk about what that milestone was like?
Yeah, I do. I can show you that if you want me to.
All right.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. This is Patrick Watkins at Jet Cuts and Styles, and pretty much at the paper we have a morning meeting with phone call because of COVID at this time, and it was just kind of this was the day when bowling alleys and barbershops reopened, and no one had really heard anything just from kind of cold calling and stuff like that. So I just kind of went out to find if anyone was open, and I drove around till I literally saw, like I went to Brown's Barbershop, and here drove around to several other barbershops, and most of them were closed. And I actually wrote the story for this like Georgia reopening with I think I have Brown's the photos from Brown's Barbershop also. Yeah, this is Brown's Barbershop.
Yeah.
And I actually had I did a story on Patrick Watkins when I was in a school at UGA, so it's kind of at a different barbershop. At Homer Wilson's barbershop was at that time.
Patrick's a well-known and well-loved community figure. I mean, anyone who interacted with him, incredible guy. So it must have been interesting to interact with him under these circumstances.
Definitely. I mean, and I was just like, why are you doing this? What's going on? And he hadn't received the $1,200 stimulus check. He hadn't been able to file for unemployment. And I think the quote he had given me was, we don't work by the hour, we work by heads. And if we're not cutting hair, we're not getting paid. And it's just, they're doing like appointment, one in, one out, and both wearing masks and cleaning and everything they can. But it's just, you can't like stay 6 feet apart when you're doing a haircut. And
that's the that's the tricky part. I'm going to pull your screen off for just a moment. But that one of the things that's really important for this series is we don't want it to appear that this series has an axe to grind. I mean, we're here to document and explore this moment. But Historic Athens, obviously we believe in all things historic and celebrating and preserving our community. Brown's Barbershop is a historic place. Hot Corner is a historic place we're actively working to preserve. And I know one of the wrinkles with all of this, like you said, with making dollars per head is, if Brown's Barbershop were to go out of business, if these barbershops go out of business, that the next door to move in would likely not represent the heritage of that area in the same way that Brown's does. I imagine you might have had some degree of mixed feelings. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, absolutely, because I mean, that me and my editor, we spent several phone calls just doing the wording for the story because of the Kemp's decision to send these people back to work, but then extend unemployment if they make, I believe, less than $300 a week. Made it such a complicated, because I'm seeing everything like Georgia forces people to go back to work online, and then I'm reading that source and I'm reading the state's press releases, and I just want to get everything right, as much as I can and unbiasedly. So I mean, I'm going in there just because when I went into Browns and Jets, it was more just I've got the other. I mean, I think the other side of the story is very clear that this is a dangerous thing to be doing. It's not advisable, but there's an economic situation to where you've been put into this, and then how does it feel? I mean, how do you feel about it? Are you happy to be back at work? Are you scared about it? Do you need to make money? And I feel like I needed to let this unvetted voice have its time, and be there as a that's obvious. I'm there to listen, most of the time.
Absolutely. I see that we've had some supportive comments. El Patron, thank you so much for all you do. And then Brenda Watkins, enjoying your interview, Josh. So thank you, Brenda, and the boss himself, El Patron. Josh, are there other images that you feel like we should include in this historic record? I mean, is Is there anything else during this COVID-19 moment that stands out to you? Some of the images we've shown so far are ones that some folks might have seen. Are there ones that you think slipped through people's radar and maybe we should focus on? Oh, well, I see the one you're about to bring up.
There's that one. I mean, I think that I've gotten the most talk
make
about.
sure to bring that. Can you bring that one back up here and I'll share it with you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right here.
Okay. So, because I know there was a lot of discussion about this.
This might be from the same day as the barbershop. Let me double check that. No, it's not. Okay.
But yeah, it was around the same time. I remember there was a lot of feelings about this photo.
Yeah, this is May 1st, and then the barbershop is April 24th. Yeah, so basically the week after. And is this on the screen? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so this is the week after. This is when Georgia pretty much reopened, or when the shelter-in-place order was basically dropped. And I'm driving through. I'm actually on the way to take a picture of Dan Miguel Tennis Complex, just for the renovations that were done there, like not just the last assignment of the day. And I'm going through downtown, and I see all these students lined up. Just, what are you doing? Like, social distancing is just like thrown out the window. And by the time I park, there's a protest formed for May Day, and it's just like, what is happening? Like, oh no, like Georgia's back open, and it's just an interesting situation. I mean, because the protesters are masks and social distancing, and few in number, but
yeah, I've wondered that. I'm glad for you to clarify that, because so when this photo came out, I know there was an immediate response of, see, no one's doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
But I think that if I understand what's going on outside of frame, the protesters are social distance from each other. Is that right? You have them each on opposite.
Yeah, they have large banners. I think there's 4. I mean, Broderick Flanagan is to the far left of this frame, and then there's another person holding the other poster over here. And I mean, I think there's 4, and there's maybe like 2 others kind of doing social media posts of these people. And then there's a caravan of cars coming through downtown to City Hall, where it was a larger demonstration, but it was still City Hall, the steps. There's enough space, and it it's the May Day demonstration. It's an important, especially right now with everything going on with just what this has done for workers, and service industry people. I mean, the May Day protest was very,
yeah,
that voices need to be heard.
Thank you. All right, so Josh, yeah. Let me keep this on screen. Let's see if there's anything else that you want to share with us today.
The Zaxby's closed in downtown. I mean,
yeah, and that's no small thing for a corporate.
All the food efforts, like we did a story on this individual's name's escaping me, but these are teachers that they work in the mornings at the schools, like feeding the kids, and then this is for the service industry and staff at the schools in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
You really see Athens like coming together. And then I did a piece on the churches kind of just converting into massive food bank operations.
Yeah. And I
this is the pastor.
I do see Broderick just shared an important note that Beto Mendoza was key in organizing. So we want to acknowledge and document that. So sorry, please continue.
Yeah, but just that great effort that churches went down. This is Corinth on the east side. This is AME downtown.
Yeah, First AME.
First AME. Just the great effort that these the churches have kind of been on the front line helping the food banks support the community. Let's see what other photos. I mean, there's just campus.
Josh, maybe one thing I want to do while you're showing this is this. There is so much noise on the internet these days. I'm going to switch back to you for a second. There is so much noise on the internet these days that we may have people tuned in right now that are interested in knowing how they can find your work online, how they can continue to stay abreast of local news, where they should subscribe, where they should send their dollars to support local journalism. Can you give us some guidance on how to tap into, follow, and support local journalism?
Yeah. The best way is to subscribe to onlineathens.com, and I would encourage everybody to I mean, just there's so much information right now. You've got to subscribe and support your local news. Us at the Athens Banner Herald and the great work. You've got Blake coming on tomorrow, Flagpole. I worked there prior to the Banner Herald, and I mean, we both do great work to inform the community. So I believe they have a Patreon set up to kind of support them, because obviously their advertising has been hit, as ours has been hit just during this. So but we really have had a subservient subscribers and people hungry for local news, because I mean, you get to the national perspective, but there's nobody really putting out the local numbers the way we are, and just trying to keep people the way we informed that our staff is. But yeah, support us if you can. Buy subscription, pick up a paper at your local convenience store. We have a social media accounts, Instagram, and just like follow us through there. We have different podcasts. Andrew does an A&E podcast weekly to kind of keep people up informed. He did a great piece on several great pieces on just like the what is going on in the world of entertainment, as far as like drive-thrus opening back up, the streaming shows that Cine is doing in town, and then just different movies online. He's great. Our sports team has a great podcast for all of UGA athletics and things like that. So you can definitely check out both of those. But I mean, a subscription, I believe, is less than $100 a year.
Yeah, I wanted to share this online right now. So I just went to the subscribe section of the Banner Herald website. They give you 3 different options to subscribe, and but I did see there was this special offer, and we do want to support local journalism. So you can see that there's a Memorial Day offer that ends today, where you can start for your first 3 months for 99 cents. So if you go to onlineathens.com and click subscribe, you can see more there. So we definitely want to shout that out. So Josh, I wish we had so much more time together. I know you probably need some more coffee and more rest.
Yeah.
But let's. I do want to wrap with the same 3 questions we've been asking.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Our guests. So let's kind of walk through those. The first question is a bit more lighthearted than some of the other discussion we've had today, but it's this: you know better than anyone the effect this is having on our small businesses. Many of them have shown innovation through curbside, but I'm going to ask you for a moment to wake up and to imagine that you wake up tomorrow, hopefully with a good night's rest, somehow it's a day off, and imagine every business in Athens was open again, every park was open again. You could go anywhere you want, just like a typical day in Athens, Georgia. How would you spend that day? Where would you go?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Mama's Boys kind of been always my favorite restaurants. It shows. I miss the big. Everybody misses the big gatherings and the music.
Yeah.
And the music. So, Georgia theater shows, and then just like the local bars, High Low and Manhattan. What is it? Showtime Bowling? Not Showtime Bowling, but what is it? It's out Jefferson Road. I can't believe the other bowling alley. But yeah. But that was kind of just like the my social groups, kind of like watering hole. We would go play some shuffleboard and bowl, and then it's basically a bar set up there. But just like kind of those the places you would hang out with friends,
So yeah, just the social settings of being able to actually get out there with friends again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Second question is this: part of what Historic Athens does, it's not all that we do. We run the Welcome Center. We do Hands-on Athens. We do a lot of public programming, but historic preservation is a key component. And when we come out of COVID, we're likely not only going to be coming out of a pandemic, we're going to be coming out of a recession. Recessions are times, post-recessions are times where sometimes growth can endanger historic places. So we're trying to kind of stay on the balls of our feet, keep in mind what historic places might become endangered soon. And keeping in mind that, Josh, someone may choose to watch this interview 50 years from now, and we want them to be able to go outside and enjoy the same kind of historic things that you and I get to enjoy now. So we've been asking each of our guests to name their favorite historic places that they hope we continue to preserve as a community. Can you share maybe some of your perspectives on those?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the Martin Theater and Hot Corner right there, there's so much history. I mean, And like Homer Wilson, I mean, he is just a treasure of the city. I mean, we have the mural that was put up last summer, and I mean, there's just so much history in that little like half block or block of that downtown Athens. You know that I've that was one of my like first stories I did, going back to Patrick Watkins again,
Yeah.
and finding about that, and then covering Hot Corner every year. Sadly, like last year it got rained out and it's canceled this year, but it's always been a different thing. Like you move to Athens, and then like what is Hot Corner, because everything in the summer is kind of Athfest and the other larger festivals that kind of draw the just the distraction. But it's just I feel like Hot Corner Festival is a uniquely Athens like cultural fest. You know?
Yeah, it's really hard to not have that this year. I know we spoke with Monty Miller a few weeks ago, and you know it's difficult to not have that moment to celebrate one of the most important parts of our history. So Josh, two things. Well, here I'll go out on our last question, which is so if someone maybe another journalist maybe someday, let's say 100 years from now, they're trying to do a 100-year retrospective on this moment in Athens history. They come across this digital archive. They're watching this interview. What do you want that person to know 100 years from now about this moment? And I know that's a layered thing now, but what would you want them to know about this moment today in Athens history?
This moment in history. I mean, you've talked about the comparisons with the Spanish flu and how that the cities kind of responded in the same way, that we really came together and we were people call it the Blue Jewel in Georgia, and it really was a unique thing we did here. We kept numbers down and we came together as a community, and I think that was really important. But I think like even more than Athens history, I think I remember talking about this on first day with my editor, just like walking through downtown and like everything's closed, and like will this survive? Like, and will Athens be able to come back? Yeah. And I feel like that's the question for everybody right now, is just kind of like this is exposed, just kind of like the gig economy and the workers that don't have either maybe they're the institution they work for is a small business where they can't give health insurance, and the way that those systems are backed in our country and society is just, you have tons of people that lost their jobs, lost their health employment, lost all of their income, especially for my photographer friends. I mean, I had some of the best photographers in the country are based in Atlanta, and they cover sports, and they're unemployed. So it's an interesting time for sure.
Well, thanks for sharing that, and thanks for being so generous with your time. I do want to say this just so that we're showing we're leading by example. I urged everybody to visit onlineathens.com, take advantage of this Memorial Day sale, $99 for 3 months. I'll admit that I also slipped on my subscription, so I went ahead and subscribed myself. So hopefully that's not flashing my credit card information.
Oh no!
On screen now. I think it's okay.
No, you're good. You're good.
But we do want to support local journalism, and we do appreciate. I know I've had the chance to talk to Caitlin and some of the new members of the team, and I know that there's a lot of energy out there to try to help people realize that we still have a neighborhood paper in addition to Flagpole, Red and Black, and some of the other important news sources. So, Josh, thanks for all that you're doing, and thanks for taking the time to come on the program with us today.
Definitely, thank you.
Of course. All right, everyone. We will be back tomorrow at 1 o'clock with the next interview in this series. We hope that you'll join us. Just as a reminder, tomorrow we will be speaking to Blake Aud of Flagpole, so 2 days of journalism in a row. And we hope that you'll be back here. This episode is brought to you completely free, thanks to our sponsors, Karen and Norman Baldwin. And you can come back tomorrow, share your questions and your comments and your thoughts. And I encourage you in every way possible to follow Josh on any social media channel possible. Just look up Joshua Jones. You'll come across him, and he's really phenomenal. Josh, you do incredible work. We're lucky to have someone with your eye here in Athens. Thanks again.
Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, great. Josh and I are going to go off the stream. We'll see you tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Please be safe, be healthy, and thanks for everything that all of you are doing out there. Take care.